So one of the major issues with homicides in Chicago is the fact that there are a number of gangs, all competing for different parts of the city, but often competing for the same parts of the city. When I mean competing, they're competing for the trade of drugs, for the trade of prostitution and the profiteering around that. And if you look at this map here, you'll see that a lot of the gangs here. There's five major gangs: the Gangster Disciples, the Black Disciples, the Black P Stones, the Vice Lords, Latin Kings. They're all represented by these uh, patches here. And you can see that there's, especially in the south side of Chicago, a large number, and the east over here, there's a large number of gangs all competing in the same area, in the same territory. And one of the issues for that is that, the gangs themselves are competing in the same areas. One of the questions we need to be thinking about is, how do the gangs end up here? So there's a few things happening here. Number one, when we look at the identity of the gangs often started out as a counterculture and against some of the discrimination that they've been facing for hundreds of years. Just as much as we have those gangs in New Zealand, like Mongrel Mob, similar sort of identity is that they were about maintaining their own identity. So obviously, Black African people who'd been slaves were freed of slavery, but systematic racism has been happening for the last 150 years. And in order to maintain a sense of identity, the gangs provide that. It's not good. Obviously, it has lots of issues about because they're involving themselves in drugs and crime. But the identity it gives to people is something that certainly the people who are in them have not had that identity. They've had that taken from them by systematic racism. So the gangs are located in the south because we know that that's an area where people who have been displaced because of gentrification have had to move to. We know that's where the poorer people live because we know that those places have had less gentrification. So they are run down. We know that's where housing projects are with unemployed people like the Robert Taylor homes. And because those people are vulnerable, because they are looking to survive, make a living. Remember, in the Robert Taylor homes, a large proportion of people in that project were earning less than $5,000 a year. So in order to survive, you might well have to turn to crime. The people themselves are desperate, so turning to crime and profiteering and making money from that is a way out for those people. And then, in addition to that, the idea of segregation. These people have not had the opportunities afforded to them in comparison to white people. They haven't been able to access loans. Their access to education is worse. So dropping out of school and joining a gang is a better opportunity than being unemployed. In the north, there's very, very few gangs, especially up here where our most affluent suburbs are that have been highly gentrified, where our upper middle class live with the highest income brackets. The poorest people are here in the south, most displaced, most vulnerable. That's where the highest homicide rates are if you compare that to the homicide map.